welcome to We're Not Wizards. We are the best, but not wizards. Enjoy the show!
Another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for July. It's almost the end of July. We're kind of tailing off into July and we're heading into August, which some people kind of think of as the summer, as they think of where the big burny hot ball of fire in the sky crosses the horizon more and more. But we are entering hopefully into the colder months, the colder times. Because at the moment, I'll be honest with you, sometimes it feels like we've not just got a ball of the ball of fire outside. We've actually got a dragon out there blowing fire across the sky and actually making the whole place incredibly hot, especially over the last couple of months. So I wanted to have somebody on the show who maybe knows a little bit about dragons, or Dracos, as they know. So I have brought on William Burgos from Draco Studios, and we're going to talk a whole pile of different things. We're going to talk a little bit about Lords of Vala. We might even talk about flightless, extinct birds riding on dinosaurs. We shall see what we can do. But thank you very, very much for joining us on the show, William. How are you? Are you well?
Hello. Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and yeah, we're very good. In preparations for Gen Con right now.
Are you going to be spending the entire kind of weekend, couple of days up at Gen Con? Is it the whole time at Gen Con for yourself?
Yeah, I usually arrive a bit earlier to make sure, since we're based in Mexico, sometimes we have to figure out how to get stuff for the booth in Indianapolis, and I'll be the whole weekend until the Sunday and Monday after Gen Con.
And because you're coming from Mexico, do you need to have and you're crossing the border into the US, do you have to have is it kind of extra paperwork and stuff like that to get your stuff? Have you got a ticket? Are you going to be shipping a lot of your materials directly to Indianapolis, or do you take a big truck up there, or do you fly it up there? How do you get up to
well, luckily this time we are more prepared than previous years.
Right.
And this time we decided to produce our stuff for the booth in the US rather than in Mexico and ship it to the US, which was a nightmare. Stuff didn't arrive, or crazy custom expenses.
Yes.
But this time we decided, let's just produce in the US and ship it right there within the US. And the good thing is that since our games are already in there, we don't have to bring anything else other than pre-production copies or painted minis and ourselves.
And a sandwich and a drink.
Yeah,
and
some food. We especially miss the Mexican food once we are in.
Oh wow! I mean, obviously there are probably a lot of decent Mexican style restaurants in Gen Con or round about kind of that area, but has it been kind of watered down by kind of people kind of living in America for some time? I mean, is there a couple of places you can go to when you're at Gen Con where you're going to get actual proper Mexican food, or is it going to be stuff that's been made so Americans can eat it?
Yeah, it's not the same to try Mexican food in another country. The ingredients, are not the same. So we go prepare to go to what is it called? Steak and Shake, I think. And we eat good hamburgers with the milkshakes, and that's usually great.
The only problem with that is if you go to Gen Con and you eat all the food there, you'll end up putting on a couple of pounds while you're there if you're eating all the burgers and drinking all the shakes and stuff like that.
Yeah, and also the Gencom pizza, the signature one.
I've never been to America, and all I've heard about America is that everything is a lot bigger. Is that the portion sizes are an awful lot bigger. The pizzas are bigger. The burgers are huge. That you get burgers that are stacked literally about the size of a small dragon, and you've got to eat the whole thing, because otherwise the cook looks at you funny.
Yeah, that's very true.
They wonder kind of what they've done. You're a native of Mexico. So in terms of, because we hear about the gaming scene in here in the United Kingdom, we hear about the gaming scene in Europe, we hear about the gaming scene in the United States. But when you were growing up, was there kind of like the same variations of kind of like, Monopoly, and were modern board games? Did you get kind of versions of Catan and stuff like that? Did you play Catan? I mean, what was your journey into getting involved in kind of board games, kind of growing up in Mexico?
That's a great question, because in Mexico, board games are usually not widely available. That has changed over the years, but in the past it was more like the typical games that are more like toys for kids. So usually when I would travel to the US on vacations when I was a kid, I would discover the trading card games, and Pokemon was the first one. So I was deeply interested in those, in the collecting cards aspect. And Pokemon brought me later to Yu-Gi-Oh!, to Magic the Gathering, until I discovered the trading card game community here in Mexico. And I started to connect with people and friends. And eventually one of them were very knowledgeable about board games. They show me Carcassonne, Catan, King of Tokyo, the gateway games.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with that. And it started what is today Draco Studios, because we started to design our own games, as many people who are players first.
When you were at school, were you quite creative at school then? I mean, were you into your art, or were you into your language, or were you into your... Because I found out more and more is that a lot of people who are into board games kind of like their maths.
Yeah.
And they like their probabilities, and they liked mucking around with, because it's all very well saying I'm creative. It's like, yeah, I can draw, but I can't design a board game. But what kind of subjects did you like kind of doing at school when you were growing up?
Yeah, that's very spot on, because I originally I was very bad at math, but at certain point in high school, I figured out that math was like a game or like a puzzle for the brain. And I started to enjoy math quite a lot. And I then represented my school in the regional math Olympics, the contests, the tournaments. So I became really good with math. But on the other hand, I always loved to draw and to play the piano and music. So I ended up doing a major on music production and audio engineering. Yeah, so it was like a funny combination, and eventually that brought me into a studio that made music for TV. And one of those TV shows that we made music for was like a huge crowdfunding event for handicapped children. It's called Telethon here in Latin America. And then when I discovered Kickstarter, I was like, this is very familiar to the crowdfunding that it's done in my work. So one thing started to lead into another, and connecting the dots, like Steve Jobs used to say.
So when did you, because looking at Board Game Geek, I've got a game called Tricksters.
Yeah.
So was that the first game that you, I mean, I'm sure there are literally tens of other games that are in prototype form that didn't reach a final version, but was Tricksters kind of like one of the first games that you worked on?
Yeah, well, it was the first game we published, not the first we designed, and attempt to create. But yeah, at that point in November of 2016,
Wow.
we had a crowdfunding. Yeah.
7 years ago now.
Yes, 7 years ago. It's been a while. We had a crowdfunding platform here in Mexico, which was called Fondeadora, and Kickstarter decided to buy that platform to become Kickstarter Mexico. So they opened their doors to Mexican creators. We heard about that, and then we funded Tricksters, which had amazing art. It was a light card game, and it became the first Mexican project to fund, like officially from the Kickstarter Mexico opening. And that led into me meeting other people in the community in Mexico who would ask for advice for Kickstarter. And today I have managed 30 Kickstarter campaigns.
Wow.
So, yeah, I kind of became like a...
You're like a guru.
Yeah, I enjoy helping people, but and also I believe that Kickstarter opens the doors to many creative projects, especially here in Mexico, where we don't have as much of awareness or communities.
Yeah. As I say, that's why I was asking the question about kind of how big the board game community was kind of in Mexico, because I think people forget it's very kind of US, European, kind of UK centric. I know that recently Japan has comes on the map quite a lot in terms of kind of like the games out there. But apart from that, I know that there's probably areas. It's kind of interesting. I think kind of like there's parts of the big continent of Africa now where you're starting to see kind of board game kind of you're hearing about board game kind of communities kind of springing up there. So it's still it's kind of like an exciting time to see kind of different companies from other parts of the world that just aren't the kind of the three ones that would be associated with board games kind of coming up. So you did Tricksters, then there was Heroes, or Hero Prepare Your Champion, and then there was the first one that I was aware of that kind of caught my eye from yourself was the dodos riding dinos. And I saw that I think I saw that across kind of main kind of Kickstarter. And so when you what was the kind of the development journey like for Dodos Riding Dinos then? Was that a long time in development? Did you work on that quite some time to do?
Oh, well, I'm more of the producer for games, because after Tricksters, well, originally Hero Prepare Your Champion was the first project we tried to fund through a cousin in Germany, because back in the day Kickstarter was not available in Mexico. So that was the very first, and then Tricksters was like the official one that was published. After that, I started to meet other people, as I was mentioning, and among those it was Pepe Magba, who had Detestable Games, which is a board game incubator here in Mexico and now in Latin America, even Spain this year. So Detestable Games started as a board game design course where people would incubate their projects along with Pepe Magba and other people who have been spending a while in the board game scene in Mexico. Pepe Magba has board game cafes here in Mexico, and then I became very good friends with him, and I love the concept of Detestable Games and the idea of how in Mexico there are very talented people. They just need some support and help to publish projects. So at the end of the board game design course, Pepe would share with me the final projects once incubated, and one of them was Microcard, the board game, and it was basically Mario Kart with meeples, and the cards were the shells. I played that and I said, this is the best Mexican design I have ever played, and I believe this will be for a long while the best one.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we cannot publish this without a proper license from Nintendo, and that might
Oh, yeah.
take, yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
years. Money,
years, exactly, money.
millions.
Exactly. So back then we were funding a project which was War for Chicken Island from Ivan Escalante from Homo Sapiens.
Mhm.
Again, other team that I met during my Kickstarter journey.
Mhm.
And I just love to incorporate the backers into the development process. And I would ask, I don't know, for this stretch goal, what would you like? Backer choice polls, something like that. And after the project funded, we said, like, we have a great racing game. What would you like it to be? And a backer suggested chickens riding dinosaurs.
Right, okay.
So it was not originally my idea.
Right.
I have to credit the backers for that.
Right.
And eventually we decided we don't have to do chickens all the time. Why not doing another extinct bird species, even though it was not contemporary to the dinosaurs? And that's how Tallest Riding Dinosaurs was born, and later a sequel and other games.
Because you've got the Dodo Dash. You've
Dodo
got
Dash, which is a sequel.
Servatonauros as well. So Servatonauros was one of the first ones. So are you overall, you're sounding to me like you're more kind of like producer, director, kind of person who is organizing. You use your creative experience, but it sounds to me like you're acting like a mentor to a lot of people, and you're kind of giving guidance to people, and people can come, because sometimes what I see is that somebody will have a good idea, and they'll have a good idea, they'll have a great game, they'll have a wonderful get wonderful feedback from everybody on how it plays, but they need somebody like it's ironic, but over here we have a show called in America it's called Shark Tank. Over here it's called Dragon's Den. Yeah. So I'm going to use the analogy. It sounds like you kind of what we call a dragon, kind of looking out for you and looking over you and kind of giving you the guidance and the kind of experience. And I'm guessing with the number of Kickstarter campaigns that you've been involved in, people were coming to you and saying, I've got this brilliant idea for a game, but I have no idea how to get it out there. So you were kind of helping them kind of with that and get it out there. Is that right?
At the beginning, yes, I would help a lot of Kickstarter creators, even from different categories than board games. And the staff from Kickstarter Mexico used to call me for seminars and events that they would do to promote Kickstarter and awareness of crowdfunding. But post-COVID, the team from Kickstarter Mexico had to disappear. And now Mexican people can still create their projects. There's no longer staff based in Mexico.
Right.
And yeah, I met more people and we created Draco Studios. That's another part of the story or background. But at that point, time would become very limited for me, and now even more than ever. I recently became a father, so time is very limited. And the way we still do that is with detestable games being the first point of contact. Yes. So in order for me and Draco Studios to consider a project to publish the game, we need to get the recommendation directly from the detestable games, from people who successfully finished the board game course. And luckily this year, Pepe was able to expand it online to all of Latin America and Spain. Wow. He just received over 300 applications of people interested in making their board games. And I hope that eventually we can make that available in worldwide, like in language barriers getting down. And
So, with you having the connection to Spain, then does that give you a doorway and a gateway into kind of dealing with more people in Europe as well? Then,
Um,
or is it primarily just creators from Spain that you're dealing with?
it was primarily creators from Mexico, and now it's Spain and Chile. Chile is big,
Wow.
very big at board game scene, and there's some from Colombia or other Latin American countries.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm. So let's talk about Draco Studios
yeah,
for a bit. I mean, you go from, you're kind of going to kind of riding dinos to kind of like this big, huge vision of this. I mean, Draco is, it looks like a big kind of almost like corporate entity. What made you decide to kind of put something together under kind of like, what kind of, where was the idea to create something like Draco Studios? Where did that come from?
it's a story that in Mexico sometimes we tell as the Avengers assemble. So after I funded on Kickstarter, I gathered with some of the people I created tricksters with, including sculptors and illustrators, game designers, and yeah, back then people would reach out to me and my team to. It was not called Draco Studios back then. It was just another name, Either Tower. And one day I met someone here in Mexico, Daniel Serviche, who he told me that he had a big project in mind, and I was like, okay, let's meet and tell me more about that. And what he told me is still excites me and shocks me, because the first thing he said was, I want to build the next Star Wars.
Wow. Okay.
So I still, to this day, I say like, aim for the stars and maybe you'll land in the moon, right?
Yeah.
So he started telling me of this idea of starting a community around board games and stories, like immersive experiences, and eventually creating comics, novels, video games, or a TV series. And that idea, while now it's very popular, like we see more publishers getting this idea of making universes or intellectual properties.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like Draco was one of the first ones, at least in Latin America, to be born in that way. Like, we want to create intellectual properties where people can immerse themselves during a lifetime, just like Star Wars or other properties. And we want to start that through the gaming scene, because the gaming community is just very noble and great to work with in the industry and all that. So eventually, with that first meeting with Daniel, we started to bring together a team in Mexico from people who were doing stuff around RPGs and board games, comics, writing. And that's how we created Eldritch Century, which is a pre-apocalyptic alternate history Earth with cosmic horror. It's just amazing that we were able to publish the RPG. But we discovered that we all love dragons, as many people do. And then we decided to create a universe that was around dragons as protagonists and antagonists, and taking inspirations from a lot of places like Eragon and Dragonlance, like a lot of dragon universes. But by that time, we named the company Draco Studios.
Yes.
And it started to grow, and now we have like a lot of 3D printing and other RPGs and comics, and the casual games, which is the Doubles Riding Dinos and Creature Kingdoms universe. But we still do a lot around dragons and RPGs, miniatures, board games, comics. We are starting like the script for the TV series.
Because you've got games like War for Chicken Island. which
Yeah.
just which just kind because it's kind of strange because it's you can tell that you're kind of looking at things and going, well, okay, what you don't seem you have a kind of an eclectic mix of different projects. So you've got, like you said, you've got kind of like your Eldritch Century, you've got the miniatures, and then one project later you're doing one about chickens, and then you're going back to kind of resin miniatures all about dragons, and then you've got kind of like your fifth edition kind of role RPGs. So does it mean that then you've got the ability to kind of create the bigger community and also give kind of jobs to kind of artists, within kind of like your contacts throughout kind of like Mexico, South America as well? Do you have like a list of kind of like artists and writers and stuff like that you can refer to, that you can talk to, that you can help network and bring on with their ideas that they have?
Kind of like the reason why we always attend to Gen Con is because it's the best place to make relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And in Gen Con, the first time we attended, we met Tom Babby, who is an artist from Wizards of the Coast and a lot of other major brands. And Tom Babby loves dragons as well, so we chat about making these huge dragons, very unique, the dragons of the Red Moon. We would by then we had a resin cast workshop and decided to make them available in resin, in 3D printing, because another of the partners, also named Daniel, is very active in the 3D printing community. And Tom Babby helped us a lot to reach new artists, again, from industry veterans like Steve Prescott or Jason Engel, Tyler Walpole. So many names from Wizards of the Coast products that have been shaped with them. And then on the sculpting side, we had something similar. And then Angus Abramson in the UK also helped us to reach out to other writers and editors. And eventually we met Alessio Cavatore from Riverhorse, and Alessio would introduce us to Mark Latam, to Caroline Pritchard Law, and eventually, yes, we are a huge network right now of people working in Draco. We started in Mexico, but right now we have a team based worldwide. But yeah, usually we work through freelance for art, for sculpt, and all that. And people interested in developing their games in that way, of course, we can recommend. But it's like the same journey.
And then you had Dragon Bond, Lords of Valor, which was, I mean, it did well over $200,000. You had about 2,500 kind of backers, and it looks like it was a bit of a departure from what you had done kind of before. Were you surprised by the kind of the level of success that it reached, or were you quietly confident it was going to do as well as it did?
I'm always pleased when we break the barrier of 700 backers.
Yes.
So yeah, I was pleased, surprised, but to be honest, I was confident that the game would be able to fund, because by the time we launched Lords of Valor, we already have like a great community of backers, of ambassadors, and we kind of structured the campaign to make sure that we are going to be able to fund, even though we put money from our pockets to complete it.
Yeah.
What we don't know is how many stretch goals we are going to reach. And Lords of Valor to this day has been the most challenging project I've been involved with, because of all the expansions, and the idea there was to make this huge game with miniatures and the gateway into the Dragon Bond universe.
Yes.
The mechanics to translate very well on the lore of the universe, and the cards to include flavor text. The expansions include some lore books and art. So yeah, it was very different to the other stuff we were doing. and yeah, I was surprised of the results.
If you did Lords of Valor again, was there any lessons that you learned that you would be, right, we're going to do this instead, or we're definitely not going to be doing this bit? Because looking at the campaign, there was a lot of additions and little stretch goals on the project, and a lot of additional sculpts and miniatures and things like that. Is there things that you would change if you were able to run the campaign again and still get the same level of success, to make things kind of maybe easier for you, I guess?
To be honest, yes, I've been thinking about that a lot, and especially because we offered some expansions at the beginning.
Yes.
But then we offered more expansions in a way that if backers request that and reach the goal in backer kit of ordering the amount we needed to produce that, we would create more expansions, because the backers were requesting more dragons and more factions to play with. So that increased a lot the scope of the game, and we had to split the project already while we had the Kickstarter project in process. So we offered 2-wave fulfillment.
Yes.
And right now I'm very, every day I am a bit more stressed, because I want to fulfill the rewards to backers.
Yes.
Who ordered single wave shipping, because some of them split their shipping and already received their base game. Others are picking the base game at Gen Con. And other than that, the base game is released at retail. All of this was communicated with backers, because I believe in full transparency on crowdfunding.
Yes.
And but at the end, the expansions and all the translations, we used to work with localization partners for the Kickstarter, and that complicated the project a bit, because this, as I was telling, includes a lot of text. So yeah, if I were to go back, I would just fund the base game with an expansion that is maybe free for backers.
Yes.
And then after completing that, we would launch maybe another Kickstarter with the rest of the expansions. That's how I would do it today.
Yeah. No, and I think one of the things with launching with a lot of expansions is that, and as we've seen over the last couple of years, all it takes is something to happen to, like, manufacturing in China, for kind of like prices to hugely increase, and or that to really, really hurt people's abilities to be able to kind of deliver the projects. Did you get was Lords of Valor, was that manufactured in China as well and then shipped over, or did you look at different sources for kind of manufacturing as well when you were kind of looking at the project?
Well, Lords of Valor was manufactured in China by Panda Games Manufacturing, which we believe have the highest quality standards. But because of that as well, Panda is very detailed on their revisions and file verification, and that extends the time as well. But at the end, the product is worth it. Like, you can see that the game will, it's perfect in production terms. Back in the day when I was producing Tricksters, I was not aware that China had specialized factories for board games. And I had the idea that producing in China was not great. In addition of not knowing anything about logistics. So we decided to produce in Mexico that game, and it was also a challenge, but it was very helpful to understand firsthand all the processes that takes to manufacture a game, and the finishes that you have to include in each component in order to be of a good quality, the materials. And later, my friend Pepe Magba also produced a game here in Mexico last year. and he discovered that producing in Mexico, even though labor is not expensive,
Yes.
the game costed twice as much as it would cost to produce in China, even with the freight shipping. So and China has better machinery.
Yeah.
So at the end, we print in China most of our stuff, other than the resin cast miniatures.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the case, is that I think when people kind of weigh up, and I've seen the discussion in, with people I know in America, when I've asked them the question about kind of would they get manufactured in America, and it's like, it's cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
It's literally going to cost me, I can get this manufactured in China for, $25, and it's got all these minis, it's got all these tokens, and, everything's fine. If I go to America and I try to get this manufactured, it's going to cost me $50 a unit, and I'm going to have to order kind of like 10,000 in order to kind of make it worth my while, and kind of make it the kind of cost. So I've seen people kind of argue that. With regards to crowdfunding, is that going to be your method kind of going forward, with you building, as you would say, putting your fingers into many pies, as they would say, and you've got so many different types of projects? Are you going to continue on the kind of the crowdfunding kind of method, or are you looking at kind of like potential kind of distribution, having things with a longer tail and things like that, so you've got continual revenue kind of coming in?
Well, crowdfunding at this point, and as I was saying, we don't see it as a way to raise funds. Of course, they are super important, but personally, with crowdfunding, what I'm looking for is more to connect through a community, or raise a crowd, if you will. Okay. It's more like connecting with people who are passionate about the products, and also want the deluxe version, or a special incentive for supporting directly to us. We expect to still do crowdfunding, and because of the large team that we have different units working on different stuff: RPGs, miniatures, board games, comics, casual games. So the trick there is that, since it comes out from the same account, sometimes it gives the wrong impression, but in reality is that we have a lot of separate teams, and we have other ways to get funding sometimes, not all times. And crowdfunding is also like a huge event for us to centralize marketing, like getting previews or reviews, or just aligning press releases. So I imagine there's no reason why we wouldn't do a crowdfunding, even though we are changing slightly. We already enter into distribution through some distributors in the US. Yes. And we are starting to try new crowdfunding platforms, such as BackerKit crowdfunding. Yes. We will include like a pre-order in there. It's not exactly like a crowdfunding with tons of stretch goals. It's more like a pre-order. Yes. And again, a way to centralize the efforts on marketing and connecting with the people who want a premium experience. And also that, like, finally, with that idea, at least the projects that I manage, I like to involve the community, include some challenges, achievements, social goals, or backer choices, like anything that would make it more like a transaction. As a backer myself, it's always enjoyable when you are able to get a voice in a product, and when you receive that product and you see that a card is named after an idea that you suggested or something like that. It's like the experience more than the product.
What gets you excited at the moment? Do you still, will you, when you go up at Gen Con, will you be going there to play games as well? Do you still have kind of like regular game nights yourself? Do you know? Obviously, I understand that you have, you've got a young baby, so every spare minute probably at the moment you'll be sleeping, or you'll be helping to look after the wee one. But when you go to Gen Con, do you get to spend a couple of hours just going and playing some games, checking out some kind of role-playing campaigns and stuff like that yourself?
Sadly, no. I yearn so much for the day when I can go to Gen Con just as a attendee with my family and play some games. But yeah, Gen Con is more like, it's work for us. So I'm excited because I have to bring a set of Lorcana. As I was saying, I'm a huge trading card game player, or used to be. And now with Lorcana, I'm able to introduce that to my wife, Pam, Disney Lorcana. And also some promos like Flamecraft from Cardboard Alchemy and Lucky Duck. I want to get that promo. But other than that is, like just going to attend the booth, to host the demos, to having meetings with people from the industry. And yeah, with the baby right now, I'm not able to play as much as we used. But last year when Pam was pregnant, we had a lot of gaming nights. That was different. Pam is also she's a chief operations officer in Draco Studios. Yeah. She's the one who makes things happen at Draco. She's fantastic. And of course, well, I say so because she's my wife, and I love her.
Of course. Yeah.
But what I mean is it's such a blessing to have like a partner in life who is also like enjoys the same hobbies. So it's, we share work, but also we share the hobby, and it's fantastic. So we don't play as much now, but Pepe Magba, because of all the board game cafes and all of that, he believes that if we are doing game publishing, we need to play games, and we need to play the new stuff that is being released. So Pepe plays every day at the board game cafe with our team from Guadalajara, from Detestable Games. Yeah. So I trust that they, as the board game design course that also playtests other game titles for Draco, they have the eye to spot some game design aspects, and I focus more on the creative side of the art, of the editing, of the product itself, of the marketing, on the crowdfunding.
One of the things that struck me about Lords of Valor is the kind of the art. The box cover for Lords of Valor is wonderful. I mean, I am a huge art snob, and I don't think I've seen anything as just stand out, and it looks epic.
Oh, thank you.
Do you remember? Do you remember the moment when you first saw it, when you kind of like you saw the art? Was there quite a few different kind of variations of that box cover, or was it just like, did it just work? Did somebody say, "Oh, you mean these dragons with these," or was it quite a few different kind of variants of the cover did you go through?
It was like the culmination of so many years of work, because Tom Babi, after we created these dragons, which right now are nominated for the Ennis on Gen Con.
Yes.
Tom Babi helped us reach new artists, and he became art director of Dragon Month and started to work with Steve Prescott and other artists to create a concept art. Steve Prescott has done such a major work on the Dragon Bond IP to create unique concepts, and he created the sketch of the cover, but because of deliverables he was not able to finish with the short turnaround time that we had. So we had another artist from Mexico that he started working with us, Aldo Dominguez, to finish from the sketch of Steve Prescott, and it was like a collaboration, of course, with the direction of Tom Babi. And because of all the concept art that we already have, it was like easy to include all the well, not easy, but the conceptual part was already done. It was more like a composition work. And as far as I can remember, Steve and Tom, they showed us that sketch. I imagine there might have been other quick scribbles or sketches, but Tom and Steve are truly awesome at their work. And then Aldo finished that cover. Aldo also did a lot of work with us on Dragon Bond, and eventually Wizards of the Coast people called him to work on Magic the Gathering, which was his dream as a child. So even though Aldo is no longer working with us, we have enabled many people at Mexico who work at Draco Studios to take a next step working with major companies. And that's also like a pleasing side of kind of being like the incubator as well of people, not just projects and board game.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if somebody's got an opportunity and it's a dream of theirs, sometimes you just kind of have to let them go. I mean, you can give him a couple of years and then you can always bring him back in again once he's had the Wizard of the Coast kind of experience. With you building up such a huge world, is there any part of you that wants to do kind of smaller stuff again? Do you want to do more kind of dodos on dinos? You want to do more of the kind of the chicken war stuff and things like that?
Actually, it's the other way around. I miss doing the major stuff because of new parenthood last year and Draco Studios growing so much in every aspect. We had an internal talk. Until last year, I was CEO of the company, and we had to restructure the company. And now it has some internal divisions.
Yes.
They are not like public facing. But right now, I'm just focusing on the lighter experiences, which are games like Those Riding Dinos. A new one that is coming that is Party Panda Pirates.
Okay.
Like, stuff like that.
You have to explain Party Panda Pirates then.
Sure.
Is that a card game? Is it what kind of game is it?
It's what we expect to be the best mini game experience. Like Those Riding Dinos, as we discussed before in the podcast, was born taking inspiration by Mario Kart.
Yes.
So Party Panda Pirates takes inspiration from Mario Party.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's a game where you enable a lot of mini games. These are pirates that are looking for the best party experiences across the seas.
Yeah.
And there's a very quick mechanic to getting to select a mini game, like in Mario Party, the video game. The board is not as important as the mini games. Mm-hmm. And then you have tons of mini games of different kinds. You have dexterity games, reaction games, like betting games, different mechanics. And our vision with that is to provide like a ton of support and ongoing life to Party Panda Pirates with mini games modules from different designers or a particular mechanic or a particular component. And that is what I'm currently working on. And the rest of the team not the rest, as I was saying, other team members are working on Dragon Ball and all the major stuff. And sometimes I missed like all those huge world building and immersive experiences. But I'm glad that we had to restructure because of our growth.
Well, I guess the other thing is as well is if you're at the point where you're not having to run about looking after every single project that's going on, then it does allow you to focus properly on and do the best work. I think you can get to a point as a business if you are looking at the finances, looking at the marketing, looking at the product, looking at organizing, making sure everybody's got coffee in their cup, then you can end up kind of being kind of spread too thin. But you have got you mentioned Dragon Bond kind of Quest, and that's behind from the team that kind of created Warhammer Quest.
Yeah.
Do you never feel like kind of like sneaking next door and just checking what they're doing? Do you get told off? Do you get a row if somebody if you're kind of going in and just checking the kind of the Dragon Bond Quest stuff? Do you get told, William, go back go back into your other job?
Yeah, it's since we work in Slack,
Yes.
we have these channels with the projects, and then
Yes.
whenever I see activity in the Dragonbond quest or in some
Yeah.
Dragonbond projects, I would just
Yeah.
pick very quickly like, how is that looking? Because I'm excited and curious. So
Told to
with
get out.
Dragonbond quest is the same.
When would you know when's Dragon Ball Quest? It's coming to Kickstarter pretty soon, isn't it? Is it next couple of months or something? Dragon Ball Quest
Yeah.
is coming.
After so much work with the Lords of Vala expansions and the translations
Yeah.
and the factory revisions, we are finally in mass productions for the expansions. And right now that side of the team has no development, had no development work to continue. So Dragon Ball Quest enter into the pipeline for graphic design and all of that. So in September, the Kickstarter is expected to launch. Right now there's a sign up page for the Kickstarter, Dragon Ball Quest. And yeah, that's in a way that Lords of Vala expansions are finally getting to backers by the end of the year. So we are preparing the Dragon Ball Quest, which is a spiritual successor of Heroes of Terranod and Warhammer Quest by the Sadler brothers.
That's big boots to fill. That's big shoes to fill indeed. Have you had a chance to play it? Are they letting you?
Yes.
Have you?
No, yes. I raised my hand to say I want to play this stuff, and I really enjoyed it. Like at the beginning, I was not very sure of how much different it would be from the other Heroes of Terranod, and no, I loved it. I love the fact that there's no player elimination, the Dragon Ball mechanic, because it's important in the lore that mortals and dragons can kind of get bonded and merge their life essences. So in the game, there's also a possibility, while dragons are aggressive to players, there's a way to bond with dragons. It's a bit hard, but if you are able to do that, then it's very pleasing to get all that power and help you in the cooperative process.
Because that was a major mechanic in Lords of Vala.
Yeah.
Was that you started off as 4 separate players, but depending on how the game progressed, you could end up in a situation where you were you were both kind of rolling a dice to see if you bonded, and then if you did bond, you became allies, and then if you won the game, then you kind of won the game kind of together. Which was unusual and a very, very unusual kind of mechanic, and kind of I've not seen that kind of mechanic before. So it was a pretty interesting mechanic to kind of have in the game. And it sounds like if Dragon Ball Quest is kind of heading the same way, it'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes as well. On card games, because I'm going to go a quick aside. I have.
Yeah, the difference in here being that players play as the characters, as the heroes.
Yes.
So if you bond with a dragon, it's still you, because the game is already fully cooperative. But in Lords of Vala, players can play as dragons or mortals, so that's why you could become bonded with another player. And yeah, it was a very, very interesting mechanic to develop. We had to playtest a lot and iterate because of backers' feedback.
Yes.
What I was telling that we enjoy to integrate backers into the development. And we ended up changing what we initially proposed in the Kickstarter so that it felt more balanced, and still you get satisfaction of winning even though someone else is looking to bond with you. You still get to win. And of course, there are ways to remove that rule if you don't enjoy it. Or once you are familiar with the game, there are ways to maximize your chances to avoid getting bonded if you don't want to.
Yes.
But it's also exciting because in the lore, when you get dragon bonded, the dragon and the mortal become more powerful over time. So in here, you unlock a new mechanic that interacts with each other, a new ability depending on your character. So that's also like very cool to enable in Lords of Vala.
I'm reminded of one of my favorite PlayStation 1 games, which was called Breath of Fire 4, and that was a mixture of kind of like dragons and people. So I kind of got that. vibe from it. So what I'll do is, obviously, we'll make sure that we make people aware of Dragonborn Quest when it's going to be out there. But if people have listened along tonight and they want to keep an eye on what Draco Studios is up to, where can they find you on the internet? Where do you exist?
Mainly, our website has a link to our Discord server, and we are very, very, very active in there with people who, whatever their interest is, Dragonborn RPGs, 3D printing, or the lighter games, Creature Kingdoms. We are always active in there. And other than that, we are also in Facebook, in Instagram. We post YouTube videos regularly, and we also have the Kickstarter profile, but it's mostly Discord, where we are directly active with the community.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, as I say, we'll get all those links from you and we'll put them in the show notes so that we've got notes to show. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then you just find us in all the normal places as well. Just search for We're Not Wizards and you'll find us on, there's like Threads, and there's, Threads and Blue Skies and Twitter. I don't know. The whole thing's becoming crashing down. And X as well, and some kind of weird kind of thing. But you know where to find us. It's fine. But if you have enjoyed what you've listened to tonight, then please consider going to your podcast catcher of choice and dropping us a rating or a review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars because it makes me big-headed. But don't give me 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5. Because it's average, and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average is the rather wonderful, rather fantastic William Burgos. Thank you very, very much for guesting. There's only 2 more questions. 2 more things we need to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, William?
We are not wizards.
There you go. We're dragons.
We are dragons, exactly. I was tempted to say that.
We are dragons. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from William. Say goodbye, William.
Goodbye, everyone, and thank you.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful. And if you're going to get bonded, make sure it's dragon bonded. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.